Hello friends, welcome to Dan Tremblay Music. Today I am very excited to have episode 2 of my artist profile series. If you didn't see the first one, you can still check it out. It was an interview with Rachel de Koekkoek from San Diego. Excellent, fantastic singer. I'll link it in the description. Today in episode 2, we are headed to Pittsburgh and we are talking to ambient slash cinematic slash singer-songwriter slash super talented producer Josh Leake. Now, I've been following Josh Leake for quite some time. First discovered him, or we might have discovered each other through SoundCloud. He does a lot of cinematic kind of ambient instrumental music, and very recently he has put out 2 super catchy, extremely well produced pop songs, which are currently streaming on Spotify, Apple Music, everywhere. Josh is just one of those super talented guys. He's a self-taught producer. We talk about music. We talk about Logic Pro. We talk about the pandemic. We talk about our kids. We talk about our shared love of people like Keith Kenneth. We cover a lot of ground. Fantastic interview. Super nice guy. Let's get right to it. So welcome, Josh Leake from Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, right? You're from Pittsburgh,
Yeah,
I think.
Pittsburgh.
I
Yes,
read
sir.
that somewhere.
Yeah.
So thanks for joining me, my friend. Yeah, just if you could just tell us a little bit about where music started from you. Tell me a little bit about, how old did you start with music? I think you were classically piano trained, I believe, if I read
Yeah.
somewhere. So just tell us a little
Yeah.
bit about that.
So I'll start giving my musical journey, and if I'm giving too much detail, just stop me because
Okay.
I obviously could go wow. So I started, when I was 6. My parents started me in music lessons or piano lessons, I guess. And so I did that all throughout, elementary, middle, high school. I took piano lessons. I took some other lessons. So I took drum lessons for about a year, but I was just not disciplined with almost anything else in terms of like really practicing. So my parents didn't really let that keep up. So yeah, that's where things started for me.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Classical. Very, very similar. Funny enough, that's kind of how I started too. I was around that age.
Okay.
And my mom taught me piano, actually. She's a piano teacher. And piano, I just kind of stuck with it. So that's really interesting. Some similarities there.
Yeah.
And now you also play guitar, right?
hmm Yeah.
Yeah, you're
So the way that kind of developed was in middle school. I had my classical stuff to practice, which I wasn't all that disciplined about practicing. I still did it, but that's when I really started to get into exploring. Okay, well, when can I start to learn to play, the pop music or things that I hear that I want to be. A lot of video game music I was really into, wanting to play on the piano, and so I was interested in guitar, but I didn't really have any great resources. My dad had an old acoustic in his basement, and so I brought that up, and there were a couple people that I knew that just taught me some basics, but I was terrible. But the thing that got me motivated was, I went to a youth group. So I grew up here in Pittsburgh, born and raised here, and at the youth group, the guy who played guitar was like moving on, and so they needed a guitarist, and they didn't care how good or bad they were, and so that was my opportunity to jump in and learn, and so that's sort of what kickstarted guitar for me.
so just you kind of got thrown into it and just went with
I
it.
did. Yep.
Yeah. Well, I have this theory, and maybe you can tell me if I'm right or not, but I have this theory that every piano player wants to be able to play guitar. Do you feel like that's true? That's true for me.
I do think that's probably true. You know what I feel like I've also seen though is like usually people want to play the thing that they don't play. I think that's probably true
Yeah.
all about piano, that people, especially who play, like pianists, want to play guitar. But I think for me, I always find myself wishing like if I had just spent a little more time on like that instrument, because I picked up violin for about a day and a half and just I couldn't keep up. But now I'm like, oh, what if I had? Anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you know how long, what it takes to become really good at an instrument, right? It's not an overnight thing, and
Right.
it's the amount of time
Yep.
that goes into it, right? I'm the
Sure.
same way. Like I dabble with guitar, but I can guarantee that you're a better guitar player than I am because I've heard some of your stuff. So yeah, you incorporate quite a bit of guitar. Now let me ask you this. I believe you're a Logic Pro guy. Are you still a Logic
Yeah.
Pro user? Okay,
Yes, I swear
awesome.
by it.
Awesome. It's genius, you know? I
It
mean,
is. Yeah.
I have a little experience. Like, have you ever used Pro Tools or anything else or
I got my I really got my start in GarageBand when I was in late high school. I begged my parents to buy like an iMac so we could have GarageBand 'cause I just wanted something to record, and so that's what I did my very early projects on. I recorded my vocals through like the mic that was built in on the top. It sounded, but I was so excited. So
yeah.
it was GarageBand for me at first, and then I went to Reason for a little bit, but then I went back to Logic. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I talk about GarageBand. So I teach mostly kids, and we talk about GarageBand, and it's an incredibly powerful
It
tool.
really is.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm always like, if you can't make something good on GarageBand, you're probably not gonna be able to make it good anywhere. So
Yeah.
to start
Yeah.
off with GarageBand, as you know, it leads nicely.
It
It leads
really
very, very
does.
nicely to Logic, right?
It does. I always
And
get frustrated when people knock on GarageBand because it's like my roots. You know what I mean? And like,
yeah,
sure, it's missing some of the more really in-depth tools, but it is
that's right.
a really
That's
great
right.
base. Yeah.
You and I, having been used to Logic, if we went back to GarageBand, we would be frustrated because you
Sure.
can't do this. But if you're just starting off, I mean, even with
It's
the amp
everything.
modeling and everything, I mean, it's nuts.
Yes.
Um,
Totally agree.
which leads me to my next question.
Mhm.
So going back to guitar a little bit, are you amping stuff? Are you miking amps? Are you using everything in the box? What's going on with your guitar sounds?
Yeah. It's a good conversation. This conversation stresses me out because I feel a little guilty about it because so, back in college, I was playing guitar a lot, and I bought a guitar amp, and I bought a nicer electric. Actually, this red one, this Gretsch right here, is the one that I bought when I was in college, and so I was putting a lot of time into getting the right tone and everything. But then, after I graduated college and we got married, we didn't have a ton of money, and so I just started selling stuff off, and I was like, I don't really need this amp. I haven't used it in forever. And so now I'm sort of wishing I had hung on to it. But what I do is I do everything direct into, I have like a Scarlett 2i2 interface. I just go direct into that. And then Guitar Rig 5 or 6, maybe it's Guitar Rig 6 because I think they just updated it. I use everything. All my guitar stuff is through Native Instruments Guitar Rig. And I really love it. I hope that people secretly, I'm like, I wonder if people know that I'm not doing it the real way, but I always hope that it sounds professional. So
No,
yeah.
it's so funny you say that because I'm all about like software, and I'm not a hardware guy at all.
Yeah. Yeah. Me neither.
Other than a couple of little things like my looping machine, I
Sure.
like, but I'm all about Guitar Rig, and yeah,
Yeah.
I just recently upgraded Guitar Rig 6, and
Okay.
it's got this killer sound called, I think it's called that XY. Anyway, look it up if you have the 6.
I'm
It's
going to
just
write that down because I want to check
yeah,
that out.
it's called that XY. I don't know if it's referring to maybe like a mic position, XY mic position, but
Huh.
man, you're gonna love it. Like
Yeah.
it's like gold.
Yeah. The
So yeah,
presets in there have been, I mean, again, I
yeah,
haven't used the new 6 that much, but from what I've sifted through, I've been very impressed with it. Yeah.
it's so clean, and I like I find the noise gate works really well, and
Mhm.
like I have a Strat which is a little bit buzzy, and
Yep.
I feel like you could just, I mean, again, if you can't get good sounds out of that, then yeah, you can get all these fancy amps. And you know what? It reminds me of a point that at the end of the day, to the end user, whoever's listening to the music, it doesn't really matter.
Yes.
They don't
Yeah.
really care that you did this or you did that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I follow, like, do you know Keith Kenneth at all? Do you know?
Oh, I love Keith Kenneth.
That's
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Well, he's all in the box, man. All the guitar
Yeah.
sounds and everything.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's using Guitar Rig. I'm sure I read that somewhere. I could be wrong,
Okay.
but at least at
I'll have to
some
look that
point,
up. That's
yeah, yeah. So yeah, I'm a huge Keith Kenneth fan, and his wife Holly too. Actually, I'm trying
yeah.
to get them to do an interview, so maybe this will spur
Maybe it
spur it
will. There
on.
you go. Yeah.
So that's cool. So we're listening to some of the same music. Very cool.
Yeah.
So let's go back a little bit. I know I'm jumping around a lot. This is kind of what I
Sure.
do, but
Yeah.
um, I always try to figure out where I've come across somebody, but I think it was SoundCloud. Does that sound about right? Did we come across each other on SoundCloud somehow?
Yeah. So that's really when I started to take music very seriously. So I mean, like I always did, but in high school, like I said, I recorded my first album on on an iMac GarageBand, acoustic guitar and vocals through the mic that was built in. And I was so proud of it. And listening back, it sounds horrible, but like I'm still really proud of it because I worked with what I had. But from that point on, I gradually started to, I had more money as I got a job. And so I invested into some different things. And then eventually, once I graduated college and I got into Logic, that's when I was like, okay, I'm going to start to try to really pursue this. And so when I got on SoundCloud, I started putting some stuff up. And then one of the things that I read, which was still one of the best pieces of advice ever, was like, you can put your music out there, but if you're not interacting with other people and genuinely like taking in what other people are creating and giving feedback to people, you're going to get lost really quick. So, I mean, that did a lot of things, but just from interacting with people like you, it gives a lot of inspiration and motivation, and it's like a community of support that's come from that. So anyway, that's a long roundabout way of saying yes, our first interaction was on SoundCloud.
Yeah, and that's what I'm all about. I mean, I love talking to other artists and hanging out with other artists and finding out where they're from and what their interests are and what tools they're using. And it's fun, and like you said, it's also very inspirational to other people. And that's kind of what my channel is all about, is to try to, anyone who's sitting around who's interested in music and maybe I can't do it, I'm like, no, you can do it.
Yeah.
And I love sharing music that I listen to, and your stuff.
Yeah.
I love your stuff, and I'm not saying that just because you agreed to do this interview, but I am a JOSHLEAKE fan. I get excited about your stuff when it comes out. So when you're talking about, new stuff that's coming out, man, I can't wait to hear it, because every time I hear something, I'm like, man, it's so good. So then it inspires me. I'm like, man, I gotta go and do some stuff now. JOSHLEAKE is doing stuff. I gotta go out there and I gotta do some stuff.
Yeah,
So
I love that. It's like I was just talking to one of my other buddies about, it's like a healthy, I don't even want to say competitiveness, because it's not really like the need to be better, but it's like you hear somebody else and you're like, oh man, I gotta do this. I can do something like that. It's like a very healthy, I don't know what you would call it.
A sports thing. Like, are you a baseball fan at all?
I am not
a sports fan. Well, whatever. Sports.
Yeah.
Anyway, when you said that, I thought of competitive, but like you're on the same team. And you're kind of, egging each other on in a positive way. So
yeah, this conversation, I think, like what you just said a couple of seconds ago of like I think there's a lot of people who getting into this world are like, I don't know if I should do this, or I don't even know how to do this. And it always bums me out when I try to have conversations with people, because in my mind, and I'm sorry if I'm going off track, I don't know exactly, hopefully I'm not ruining the point where you're going to say, but
no, just go.
Like for me, like this is the most exciting time to be a music creator, because, I had an uncle, or maybe it was a great uncle, I don't know, who music, 20 years ago, but he couldn't really do anything with it. He was living in a rural town and the internet didn't exist. And so he did stuff on his own. And he talks about now, like, man, I so badly wish that we had this. And I think a lot of people that I talk to, I have some younger guys that I talk to a lot who are just starting to get into this world, or who are interested, and they sort of feel like there's so much music out there that it's hard to get yourself noticed, which I am on board with. But like, I think what's always been a motivator for me, and especially when I was on SoundCloud, but I was like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to do this no matter how long it takes. It was motivating to know, like, I have the ability. It might be really hard. I know it's something like 65,000 songs are on Spotify every day. I don't know. It's some ridiculous number of tracks that are uploaded. But to me, again, I'm like, I can break through that. Like, if I want it bad enough and I am motivated enough and I keep working at it, it may take me 8 years, which is my original goal when I got started in 2015 or 16, really seriously doing this. I had an 8-year goal. And Anyway, yeah. Sorry. Again, I don't know.
No,
I don't have a good radar for when I'm
no.
going on too long. But yeah.
Yeah, I totally say you're speaking to, it's kind of like the oversaturation of the market, and that might lead me to this next point. Actually, speaking of oversaturation, but so you also have experience with music licensing through Artlist, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's still a lot of interest in, I follow a lot of people, a lot of channels on YouTube. I've dabbled a little bit with licensing music. Can you just share a little bit about your experience? Anything at all that you could help anyone who's maybe interested in licensing their music? Anything, any helpful tips?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'll give, I guess, a little bit of context for how I got into it. So, when I was seriously starting to pursue putting my music out there and hopefully making money from music, I had a friend who was a content producer who was making videos for different companies and stuff, and so I just offered to make him stuff for free, and that was a really, really great way to get started because I was getting feedback and it was a way to put my stuff out there. I saw somebody, I don't remember who said this, but again, this is another one of the best pieces of advice I got. They were like, early on, do everything you can for free, take every opportunity you can. So that was my goal when I was doing all of this, was any opportunity I could get. And so I was doing it for this guy, and I thought my goal was that I eventually wanted to be making custom soundtracks for movies and for trailers, and the idea of a big name or a big company pursuing me to use me for something custom was like, that was a dream come true. And then as I started to do this more and I made a few more connections, I realized that I hated it so much. I really hated it because, it is it's a different world where you send someone something and then they're like, this isn't what I was looking for. You go back to the drawing board and you send them something new and they're like, no. And it just got exhausting. And so I still did that for a while, but my friend that I was making the music for recommended, that I look into some different licensing stuff. And so Artlist was, I think, the first one that I tried. In this sense, I got very lucky because Artlist was very new. I think they had just come out with their beta when I got on. And so I happened to get on at a very fortunate time. But very quickly, what I realized after I got approved to get on Artlist was, I found that this was the thing that I wanted to do because, there's a ton of different licensing platforms out there, but you get to keep I guess it depends on what company you work with. Sometimes you could work for a company that wants specific things before they put it on their site, but depending on who you have most of the control, and then people get to decide whether or not they want to use it, but you don't have to make all of these tweaks. It's passive. And that was the biggest thing that I was looking for. Since I was a young kid, that was always beat into my head in a good way, just pounded of like passive income. And so finding that source of like, okay, licensing is both the control that I want and just passive income where I'm still making money for tracks that I made in 2016 or whatever. So that's a quick little synopsis of my music licensing experience.
Yeah, and it's interesting you say that because I also have a little bit of experience, not through Artlist, but through other licensing companies, and I've also done custom work, and I understand exactly what you're saying about the frustrations of custom work. Yep. Because I don't know how you are, but if somebody sends me something and I look at it, it takes me a while, but then I lock in and I know exactly how I want it to be. And then whatever it is, that's what it is. And I feel like I nailed it. And then you send it back and you're like, yeah, that's no good. Change everything. It's like what?
The worst feeling. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
You get attached and then you have to start over.
It is, custom work is brutal, and I think that's probably why. But you know what? I think it's also it can be brutal for the content creators too, for the filmmakers.
Yeah.
But I've listened to a lot of stuff on Artlist, of course your stuff and other stuff, and it seems the stuff coming out of that library is really good stuff. And I think that the subscription model is for filmmakers is incredibly useful and versatile, and I think it's really easy to find stuff quickly.
Yeah, it is really interesting. Yeah.
All right, very, very interesting. All right, I'm bouncing around. I have some notes up here on a board, so I'm like, that's why I keep looking up.
Yeah.
Okay, so you had your third kid. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
So how's that going? So 3 kids, that's no joke.
Yeah. Yeah. It is. So far, it's going well. I've had a lot of conversations with people about how they felt about 2 kids versus 3 kids. Cause, I have a lot of friends that are in the 2 to 3 stage. And so I've heard a lot of different things about, no, 2 kids is harder. No, 3 kids is harder. And each had their reasons for why. They were like, when you go from 1 to 2, like 1 is pretty easy because you're both double teaming, but then you each have one. That's really hard. And then once you throw 3 in, whatever. And then I've also heard like sports term, like your man-to-man defense when it's 2, but then you go into zone when it's 3. And so I had no idea so far. And I know it's very early because July 25th was when she was born.
Wow.
It's very early to
Very
say.
early.
But
Yeah.
so far, it's been way easier than 2 was. 2 was,
Okay,
I don't know how
okay.
it was for you, but man, 2 was, and I think it has a lot to do with the kid's personality, but my second, Clara, is a fireball. She had colic for 6 months and she has an
Oh,
attitude and she's
yeah.
fiery. I love her, but
That
she was,
attitude doesn't change, by the way, just from my
whew,
personal. I
oh
love
man,
my kids. I love
I
my
gotta
kids to
buckle up
death.
then.
Yeah, so yeah, I had two. Which I think I told you that. And yeah, so my 2 girls, they didn't sleep. Um, I think for the first 2 years of each of their lives. We were so sleep deprived. I used to have this office job, which I hated. And I would go in every day and I would be so tired. And one time my boss came up to me, and this was after my second one, and she looked at me and she's like, I thought I was going to be in trouble. I thought I was falling asleep. And she's like, do you need to go and sleep somewhere? She's like, I won't tell anyone if you need to go.
Did you?
No, I didn't have a nap, but
Okay.
she did offer. I thought about it. So 2 for me, because I think if they had slept better, I think probably we may have had a third. But
Okay.
but
Yeah.
good for you, man. I mean, that's so exciting. Like,
Yeah.
there's nothing like parenthood, man. There's
Yeah.
nothing like having kids. It's like it's the most fun, it's the most rewarding thing
It
in the world,
absolutely, it
you know?
absolutely is. Yeah. And I'm not to get too deep too quick, but I feel like one of the best things about parenting, I mean, and all of the different things that people talk about, you don't fully understand until you're a parent and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it. But for me, like I had all of these different aspirations of like what I wanted to be and how much money I wanted to make and how far I wanted to go. And then when I became a parent, it's not that I didn't care at all about those things, but like when your life is about somebody else, like a lot of those things just seem less important. You know what I mean? So like obviously
Yeah.
I love making music and it means the world to me, but like it doesn't have I'm not driven towards the same stuff because I'm like, yeah, you know what? Like that's not as important to me as it once was. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're right. Everything changes in a heartbeat. I think because up until the point where you become a parent, um, well, I guess it starts when you meet that, special someone. And because up until that point in your life, it's probably just about you, right? It's like an
Mhm.
egocentric kind of a thing, and then you have like a joint partner, and that changes. And then you have when you're a parent, it just you're right. It's like everything else. It's like through COVID, right? This whole COVID madness. For us, there's nothing more important than are our kids okay? Are they safe? Are they healthy?
Right.
And then whatever else doesn't matter to us. It's like, are they okay?
Yeah.
Which leads me to my next point.
Hmm.
COVID, how has that affected, your day-to-day kind of music stuff? Have you been directly affected with it? Have your kids been okay? Anything you want to share about that?
Yeah. So everything has gone actually as well as it could have been, which I'm very grateful for because I know that not everybody is in the position that we have been fortunate to be in with their health or with their jobs or family or any of that stuff. Everything, I've known people who've gotten sick. I've had family that's gotten sick. Everybody that I've known has been okay, thankfully. I think the way that it's affected our both my work life and my family life, as I think everybody has felt of just being inside all the time, has been very tricky. It's interesting because during the last year and a half, I have actually struggled more. I've been inside triple the amount, but I have struggled to make music way more than usual. And I think it's just because, everything that's been going on. Music isn't my main thing. So I work I work at a church 10 years down the road. It's the church that I've grown up at my whole life. That's like my day job. And then I do music on the side. So I think with everything going on with COVID and work and all that stuff, it's been the past like year, I guess I should say, up until about the end of 2020, I just felt like I had no creative juice left in my body to do anything. And it was a hard year, obviously, for everybody for a lot of reasons, but creatively for me, I felt, I think I actually posted on social about this a little bit ago. I just was like sapped. I thought I had like nothing left. I had an interaction with another artist in May who was somebody that I looked up to. And it was I got a message on Instagram, and it was, I probably can't go into the details, but all I can say is it was crushing. It was the worst. It was probably one of the worst days of my life. It was awful. So all of that said, like up until the end of 2020 was creatively awful. And I was like, I might just be done doing what I'm doing in the capacity. I'll do some stuff on the side, but I don't know if I'll pursue it in the same way. And then, 2021 rolled around, and the past 6, 7, 8 months, I just have had I had some conversations with, some of the other artists that I'm friends with. There's this one guy, his name's Vic Davi. He does really, really great stuff, but I've had a lot of conversations with him about just getting out of the funk, and he was really encouraging. And so the past 6 or 7 months have been by far the most productive and exciting and inspiring creative times that I've had. It's sort of like the calm rainbow after the storm, which is exciting because it was a rough year. So anyway, yeah, things are going well now.
I'm glad to hear that, my friend. So glad to hear that. And, we're kind of what we're talking about, is mental health, right?
Sure.
And everybody's mental health has been just, trashed.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I went through some similar things of what you're talking to. I think a lot of people did. And I think a lot of people have done soul searching, like why bother? Why bother put music out? Why bother do YouTube videos?
Yep.
And I think at some point, same thing. I just dug my heels in. I said, that's it. I'm putting stuff out constantly, whether it's videos or songs or whatever. Just going to put stuff out, and just because of an inherent need to do it. But yeah, mental health is something that it's so many artists in particular, I think have been, I mean, everybody's been infected by it, but certainly people that rely on touring. Do you know Lowercase Noises? Do you know Andy Offling? Do you know his stuff at all?
Yeah, I do know, and that name sounds so familiar. Yes, I do. I just click with it.
Yeah. No, see, he's like a ambient guitar connoisseur.
Mm-hmm.
But he's been really, really open with just his constant battles with mental health, and it's been heartbreaking to watch. And he's been really open. He's done videos, and it just occurs to me that, so anyway, part of what this, why I'm talking about this is there might be other people out there right now that might be watching this, and it's just like, hang in there. It's like I feel like we're finally getting through this thing, and keep doing what you're doing, especially Josh. I mean, your music is so good. It does have, it's interesting that you said you work in a church, because I do feel like there's like a spiritual kind of feeling within your music. I don't know if that's awesome. I don't know if it's intentional, particularly with your instrumental music.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it is. I know people come from all different experiences and they interpret things different way. But for me, when I'm creating and when I'm making it, I do feel like my personal faith in God and my connection to him, my relationship with them, is what's coming out in the music. And that's why I think a lot of it carries the emotion that it does. So yeah.
Excellent. And now let me ask you this. You do instrumental music, but you also do pop songs. So let's talk about the 2 pop songs that you just put out, which are super catchy.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Yeah. So my first stuff that I ever worked on when I was in high school was stuff with lyrics. And as I got older and I looked back, I was like, I just don't think I'm a singer. I don't think I have a very good voice. I don't think I'll ever be good at this. And I had some other people that I am close with and friends with kind of say similar things, not outright say you're bad at this, but they just were like, yeah, you should probably stick to instrumental music. And I was like, yeah, that just confirms for me this isn't my thing. But I sort of had one of those dig my heels in moments a couple years ago when I was like, no, I'm gonna get good at this, and if I have to work on my vocals every day, I'm gonna do that, and I'm gonna get to the point where I'm happy with it. And so I did that for a while. I also sing at my church every week, and so that's a good place to practice. But just a couple years ago, I started putting out pop songs under Evening Traveler because I was like, I'm gonna do this. And so yeah, these ones that I just released these two on Friday. So these ones I'm very, very excited of any of the stuff that I've worked on, especially lyrically. Like, this is the stuff that I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm starting to hit where I want to go. Where, like, the second one, Finding Out As I Go, that's the second song on the 2-song EP. That one is like a lot about my experience with mental health last year and everything that I went through, and sort of, it was a very cathartic song where, sometimes, you write you sit down and a song will take like 10 hours to write. This was one of those ones that I sat down and I felt like it came out in like half an hour. Like, it just popped out and I was like, whoa. So, and then, the other one is just about like, my experience with looking back on high school and the memories and people that I still am around now. So like, the songs that I wrote for these are definitely the most personal, and I just feel like they came out of a place that I don't know, that I'm really excited about, because they feel authentic, and production wise, they came together and I really like. So yeah, I'm very excited about them.
Yeah. Now, speaking of production wise, like, I listen to these, and I listen to a lot of stuff, and I listen to things. I talk about like passive listening and active listening. So passive, you're just kind of kicking around and enjoying yourself. But I think most of the time, artists like us are actively listening, and they're like, whoa, what is that? What does that sound? Where does that come from? And I've sent you emails in the past. I'm like, Josh, how did you do this? What is this? So Josh, thank you. This is the internet world. Josh has given me some killer production advice. Una corda piano.
Yeah.
I had no idea what that was. He told me, I love that.
It's the best.
Okay, so production wise, have you had any training with mixing or anything like? Because your stuff is so well mixed and produced. So how do you do that?
That is so. Every time anyone says that, it means so much to me, because I have very little actual experience. I should say I have no legitimate experience. Like, it's not. I haven't done anything live really ever. And it really was just like, when I was working on it, this was in college when I was working with Reason. I went from GarageBand to Reason because I was like, I had a guy recommend, if you want to start to get serious about some of the more in-depth tools and control, you should look at Reason. And I think this was before like the Logic Pro X upgrade, which was like a big deal for the program. And so that was when I started to like, I realized like a whole new world of music, of like tone shaping and how it affected everything. And I was terrible. And I remember I would open up like a compressor, and I would see threshold, and I would see ratio and attack. And I was like, I don't know what any of this does. And I probably never will. And I probably will just never get to make good music because I don't know what it does, and I can't pay anybody. But I'd like sat down, and actually in college, I would go into my classes and I would just tune out from what anyone was talking about. And I would just read articles about like, what's a compressor and how does that affect things?
Right.
Because I was like, I'm going to learn this. And so it's been a long journey. It's been a lot of like YouTube videos, a lot of talking to other artists, a lot of messing around until I'm like, okay, I kind of get what that does. To now I feel like, yeah, I still feel like I'm not quite where I want to be, but like I'm like, oh wow, I think I can do this. Like, it's sort of like what you were talking about with like Guitar Rig, of like, I hope no one notices that this is all in the box. I sort of feel that way as a producer. Like, I hope
nobody knows, man. Like, honestly, your stuff, like, everything sits so well, and the vocal is in, they call it the pocket. It's right in there in the pocket. I mean, it just, and your instrumental stuff too. It's just so well mixed.
Thanks, man.
It's sickening how well it's mixed, because I listen to it. I'm like, come on, man. How's he doing this? This is usually when I get on and I send Josh another email and say, how did you do that? But I love that, man. I love the fact that you're using the Logic. I love the fact that it's in the box. I love the fact that you're mixing your own stuff, and just using, I mean, it's kind of we're using basic tools, right? We're using we're using a $300 program, and you got a Scarlett interface. I got a Scarlett interface.
Yeah,
It's
which is like the bottom line of
it
interfaces.
is, but
It's great. I love
it's
it.
so clean, and
It
I
is.
tell people that, they could go out and buy like an Apollo Duo or whatever, but if your
Yeah.
song isn't good, if your arrangement isn't good, if you don't know how to mix, none of that is going to matter. It just
Right.
isn't going to matter.
Yeah.
So very, very cool. And do you have a preference? So between so yeah, I think you said you have an instrumental album coming out too. Is that right?
Yes,
Coming up?
I am like 95% done with it, and probably late September, early October is when that would be coming out. So yeah.
Nice. Now, does the instrumental stuff, is it more comfortable for you? Does it come more easily to you between the vocal stuff?
So I would say it really depends. I think probably naturally the instrumental stuff comes easy because I don't really feel any need to abide by a particular set of rules. So, when I'm making pop music, I'm sort of always thinking like, when I put this out there, are people in the back of their minds going to be thinking, this sounds like it's 15 years old. Like this style is so old. So, like I'm trying to think, is this somewhat current? And like, I have to listen to what's current, which I don't always do. So it requires more of me, like trying to figure out where are things currently and how can I somewhat fit into that. With instrumental stuff, it's like, sort of whatever I'm feeling. I guess this album is the exception because with the stuff that I've done in the past, it was like I really liked cinematic stuff. I really like ambient stuff, and it was all in that vein. It was sort of whatever I was feeling, and I had inspirations, but it was like whatever I wanted to do. This time around, and I think that's a lot of where some of the barrier that was holding me back from working on more instrumental stuff for the past year was like I was like I don't want to just do more of the same. I'm a little bit sick of doing the exact same thing, so like I don't know how to reinvent myself at all. So with this album, it was more of a struggle, but in a really rewarding way to where when I finished it, or I guess almost finished it, there's a lot more percussion on this one. It definitely is still in the ambient, maybe a little bit cinematic, chill vibes. Yeah, it dips maybe a little bit more into like the lo-fi world of like percussion. So anyway, yeah, probably gravitate more towards instrumental at the end of the day.
Excellent. I mean, you seem like from a listener standpoint, it sounds like when I'm just listening to it, I'm like, oh, he sounds totally comfortable doing either one because they both sound really good to me. Now, when you're doing the instrumental stuff, and are you thinking with these instrumental albums, are you just making the music that you want to make, or at some point in time, is there in the back of your mind, you're like, can I license this? Can I sell this? Does any of that enter into your production kind of phase?
Yeah, that's a big question that I've gone back and forth on a lot. That feels like it's a really good one because I struggle with that of like, when I'm creating really anything, like who is the audience that I'm making this for? I think probably every artist struggles with that idea a little bit of like, okay, do I make this for people who would just listen and then hopefully licensing does well, or do I make this for licensing and like who cares if anybody likes it as long as the people who want to video creators, as long as they like it? Or like I've seen a lot of people say like just make it for you and the rest will work itself out, and I'm like, I don't know if that's always true with licensing, because like if I like it, it might not necessarily do well there. So I think I probably gravitate towards different ones each time. I think with my last one, with Clara, which I put out in 2019, I had licensing in mind a lot. I was thinking about like, okay, what's going to sound good for videos, but also that I'll enjoy to hear. This time around, I think I was more than any other time just sort of doing what I wanted to do. And I hope that works out. But I think I've sort of reconciled in my mind, like, you know what? If it doesn't do well with licensing and it doesn't do well with anybody, like if no one else likes this, that's okay. Because yeah, I hope so. I really
like
it. But like, at the end of the day, I'm happy with what I've made because I do feel like it feels a little bit different than stuff in the past. It feels a little bit fresh, at least to me. And so, so that's where this one has been at. Yeah.
Oh, excellent. Very, very interesting. Well, it sounds like you're sticking to your goals and you're doing the music that you want to do. So, I'm kind of a believer of, yeah, it's going to work itself out.
Yeah.
Now, musical goals. Do you have goals for yourself, like future goals? Do you want to? Are you interested in doing live? Have you done any, like? I've dabbled a little bit in the live streaming, which I have not
Okay.
enjoyed at all. So I'm curious, has that ever entered in your mind through the whole pandemic? I mean, I guess things are opening up now.
Yep. Yeah. So same thing. I did the live streaming thing I did it for probably a month, and I was so excited when I got into it. And I know a little bit about like creating graphics, and so I created all of these different like simple motion graphics that I was going to use on my stream, and I did it for a couple of weeks, and I was like, this is the worst. It's like it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's like performing. I mean, obviously, but so I was like doing it like I'm going to create music live, and it just did not go very well. So I think I'm finding that a lot of my goals as I go along, since I started 2015, 2016, a lot of the goals that I've had as I've actually started to try some, I've realized, yeah, no, I don't actually want that. So as far as like performing live, I love the idea of it. I don't know if that's one of those things that like once I actually did it, I would be like, that was not enjoyable at all. I have no idea. I like the idea of it a lot, and it's definitely on my mind of sometime in the coming years, I'd like to, get a couple guys together and go play live music somewhere. Because I haven't, other than playing in church, which I love doing, I haven't had much experience outside of that. But I guess when it comes to goals, like I said, it's changed a lot. At first, I was like, I want to be a content, or I want to make music for soundtracks for specific people, and then that changed. And I was like, okay, I want to get on a licensing site, and I want to, I want to make some money doing that. And then I was like, okay, my goal is to make this much money, and hopefully, get it to the place where my wife can stay at home. Because I wanted her to be a full-time mom, but she had to work because we didn't have enough money. And then I hit that goal. That was like an 8-year goal, because I was like, I had a ton of people tell me like, if you get into the music making world, it's a very common idea that musicians don't make a lot of money, and everybody was telling me that. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. That was like a motivator for me. I was like, I'm going to prove everyone wrong, and I'm going to take my time. It might take me 8 years, but I'm going to do it. And so I set an 8-year goal, and then it happened way quicker than that, which I'm very grateful for. Actually, as soon as our son was born in 2017, the licensing site emailed me and sent me the earnings for like that period. And I was like, oh my gosh, I did it. But then, after that period, I was like, okay, well, now what's my goal? And so for the past little bit, I think I've just sort of been trying to rediscover what those goals are. I think like one of the more recent ones was like, I want to reinvent my instrumental stuff and just take it to a place where I'm happy experimenting with some new stuff. But as far as like actual number goals or influence goals or reach goals, I don't know that it probably is something I should do and I've thought about, but I haven't probably done that recently where I've made some really hard goals of what I'm shooting for. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Yeah. It's and I hear what you're saying, and in terms of musicians making money. Yeah, I always joke, like I'm a huge Hans Zimmer fan, and anytime he does an interview or anything, I'm just zoned in.
Yep.
And I forget what's the expression that he says. You could do anything else, any other job, and probably make more money, but it's like, if it's in you, this artist kind of thing, it's like it's like this it's beyond a desire, it's like, you got to do it, what I mean?
Like part of you. Yeah,
it is.
Yeah,
it really is. When I'm not creating, when I'm not putting stuff out, I am generally miserable. I am a miserable person to be around. My wife does not want anything to do with me. So she's like, go write, go do some music.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm doing it, I'm happy.
Yeah.
So, and when I'm doing stuff like this, I love doing stuff like this, and I love drawing inspiration from other artists who are doing awesome things.
Yeah. Honestly, that's like, I feel like the whole idea of like, you can't make money through music, is it definitely is true for a lot of people. It's a very hard field to make money from. I'll definitely say that. But what my encouragement to people, both people that and anybody, any artist that happen to be listening or watching or whatever, is there's never, I know I said this earlier, there's never been a better time where it's more possible. There's so many options between, different things that you can do of creating for specific people or, putting stuff on. There's people who are making money doing stuff on Instagram. I have no idea how well YouTube, Instagram, whatever, some of that stuff works, but there's a lot of options out there, which can both be intimidating and exciting. But I view it as exciting, and I hope that other people do too.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. It's you just have to be willing to put in the time, and you have to look at it as a job and as a career.
Yeah.
And you're talking about your goals that you set for you. It's really interesting because a lot of people have, it's like workout goals, I'm going to be fit and super fit in like a month. And it's like, no, you're not. So it's like you set yourself a long goal. I mean, an 8-year goal. I mean, but it seems to me like you're approaching it from a very realistic point of view. And that's something that I've had to learn. I tend to be an impatient person and I want like immediate results. And I'm like, oh man, all this music is like, it's a marathon. That's how I always say to myself. The whole thing is a marathon.
It is.
And I'm working with another composer who's been around a long time. And I made a joke about, and he's very, very successful. And he's like, but Dan, he's like, look how long I've been doing this. And I've been doing it for decades and decades and decades.
Yeah.
So sometimes, we have to be patient. Sometimes it's tough.
Yeah.
Anyway, Josh, I know I won't take too much of your time, but thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
I think you're doing some great stuff. I think everything that you put out, I'm always excited about, and I'm always interested in hearing it. And keep doing what you're doing, man. It's fantastic.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot, man.
Final thoughts. I think people like Josh Leake are very inspirational for a lot of reasons. One, they are doing great things with very few tools. Okay, Josh is doing stuff in the box, Logic Pro, he's got a Scarlett interface, microphone, he's using guitar rig. It's not the tools. It's not the amount of tools that you have. It's not the amount of money that you throw at plugins and gear. It's meaningless. All of that is meaningless. If you can't write a good song and come up with a good arrangement and you don't know how to put it together and you don't have a good set of ears, that's what is going to make great music, how to convey emotion. And the tools just don't matter. Listen to Josh's stuff. It sounds fantastic. Super excited about his instrumental albums coming later in the year. Great things are going to happen for Josh. And you can check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, all streaming platforms. YouTube, if you want to license his music, you can license it through Artlist. I'll link everything in the description below. Can't say enough about Josh. And for me, it was just super fun. I hope through this artist profile series to reach other people out there who are thinking about doing their own music, or they're not sure, are people going to like it? Is it going to be good enough? Do I have, enough gear? I think this is just proof positive that just do it. Just get your stuff out there. Create the music that you want to create, and people will find you as long as you're sticking to your vision and you're conveying the emotion and the energy that you want to convey. So thanks for watching, my friends. I hope this inspires you to go and create. Go check out Josh's stuff. Fantastic, super nice guy. And we'll catch you in the next one. Stay safe.